Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Now I hope you're having an amazing day, because if you're having an amazing day, I'm having an amazing day. But in all likelihood, you're having a shitty day because it's Monday. It's an amazing day for me though, because unlike you office slaves, Monday's my off day. But you know, the day of joy for you guys is Saturday, right? In my case, the bulk of my work is concentrated on the weekends. And after school hours, so 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, you know, those are my hours, because you know I'm a freelance tuition teacher, so I give tuition in IGCSE, English as a first language, and IELTS as well. So the time when students are free is not during regular office hours. So while you guys are busy grinding away in the office, I'm working on this YouTube channel. Okay, beside the point. Right, now today's topic is gonna be the token Asian friend. Okay, now as an Asian person living in the West, or living in any other part of the world, have you ever felt that you were just the token Asian friend, Not a friend on equal terms from the other party's perspective, but rather a friend who was merely meant to fulfill a diversity quota. I think this is true for a lot of Asians living in the Western democracies, yeah? They end up becoming friends of people, usually people who fancy themselves to be liberal, progressive, and open-minded, but are really not. They just like thinking of themselves as liberal, progressive, and open-minded because they like K-pop and they like Chinese food, and perhaps they like dating Chinese women as well. So they surround themselves with a couple of colored friends, like friends of color. They might get an Asian friend here or a black friend there. But the reality is that they don't actually like us as people, right? The only reason they have a couple of Asian friends or black friends is because they want to, it's more for the optics rather than out of genuine friendship, you know what I mean? So you end up becoming like the token minority friend. But when you dig deeper into their psyche, you find that they don't really like us. Okay, I'll give you an example. I don't like doxing people. In fact, I've never doxed anyone before, so I'm not going to reveal this guy's name. But yeah, back when I was a student at Adelaide University, most of my friends were international students. And this is not to say that, it's because international students were like sort of like an expat bubble who only stuck to themselves. But it was very, very much more difficult to break into the white Australian circle, right? For the most part, now, to be fair, most Australian students at Adelaide Uni, most white-collar Australians were civilized and polite, and got along with me on a classmate-to-classmate basis, I studied history and English, so very civilized people take up these courses, not law or business studies or journalism. Yeah, those courses are filled with psychopaths. Very civilized people take up courses like English and history, philosophy, the humanities. But the thing is, there was always a certain barrier between us, Well, it's not that, I didn't try to make friends, but the thing is, most students, most of the white Australian students, when they look at you as an international student, you're seen as a transitory being, in the sense that you're just there to study, spend your 4 years there studying, contributing to their economy, and then getting out after that. So they don't think it's really very much of a point. There's not much of a point to form a close friendship with you, because beside the fact that your culture is very, very alien to them, right? They do find us international students, our accents, our cultures, our customs and traditions be very, very alien. So perhaps too alien for comfort, you know? Unless, of course, they're very, very global and very well traveled, and they have friends from other countries. Most white Australians, and I don't mean this in a denigrating way, will not go out of their way to befriend international students who are not European. Now, if you were Italian or French or Greek, that would be different. They have a slightly closer cultural bond. So often they click a lot better with the European international students than the Asian. So even Asian students who in their own countries would have vast differences, vast cultural and ideological differences. Like, you know, Malaysians and Singaporeans don't always get along. In fact, Malaysians and Singaporeans are like Britain and America. We're always at rivalry with one another. Of course, Singapore's beating us now, but the thing is, when we go overseas to study, regardless of whether it's Australia, Britain, America, we are chums. Chinese and Malays in this country have we have differences. You know, there are times when we sometimes misunderstand one another. Yes, racial tensions do occur on occasion, even though for the most part we get along pretty well. I must say that we haven't reached the level of incivility. Is that the right prefix? Uncivility, sorry. We haven't reached the level of uncivilized behavior that, you know, people in certain countries have reached when they're actually bashing each other up on the streets, and we haven't reached that level. Ever since May 13, 1969, and you can look it up, we haven't had the same level of barbarity as, you know, curry bashing or paki bashing, or, you know, when gangs of African Americans go up beating up innocent Asians. We haven't reached that level of barbarity, and I don't think we ever will, because Asian culture, at the end of the day, is collectivist rather than individualist. So we try to get along. Because cohesion is very important. But I digress. Even Malays and Chinese, when we go overseas to study, we set aside our cultural and ideological differences, and we're all bros, right? Because we're all in a land that is, hostile to us, that considers us to be alien and too foreign. But occasionally, you might get this white, liberal, left-leaning progressive. Now, conservatives usually just shun us. If they don't like us, they don't go out of their way. White conservatives who don't like Asians normally just don't go out of their way to befriend Asians. They would just shun us, right? But the liberals white liberals sometimes might actually get a couple of token Asian friends, and then we think, oh, that's great, you know, they're open-minded enough to actually be friends with us. Wow, that's great. But when you get to the heart of this friendship, it doesn't feel like it's a friendship of equals, because oftentimes they always have this rather patronizing way of treating you, you know, like it's almost like they consider their friendship to be a charity case, you know, like I'm actually condescending to befriend this Asian person. You know what I mean? and that I'm certainly not speaking for all white people. There are, I do have white friends who are genuinely friends with me. And you know, like, I don't like doxing people, so I'll just give this guy a pseudonym. Let's call him Bob, okay? You would think Bob was this very, very open-minded, liberal Australian who's got an Indonesian partner, very, very open-minded and very willing to learn about other cultures. I'm Malaysian Chinese, so we made friends with one another, with each other when we were both in the same history course together, right? Now, the thing is, he and I are no longer friends, of course, because I was the one who cut off the friendship, because I'm not going to be somebody's token Asian friend. Every time I brought up issues concerning me, about, racism against Asians in America, or racism against Asians in Australia, or every time I brought up, issues pertaining to the Aboriginal Australians in Australia, Bob would get very, very defensive. He would get his white fragility would just come out, and basically he would, he would basically lecture me about how we live in a post-racial world, and just white privilege doesn't really exist, and it's all in my head, so I couldn't help but feel gaslighted. But when I brought up my concerns, about problematic Asian women like Esther Koo, who are going around spreading the Orientalist trope that Asian men were these misogynistic men, patriarchal woman oppressors who thought that, women were their property. Bob has to come. He comes around and white explains to me that these women have they have a right to speak up about their negative experiences in their culture. They've got these Asian women who had negative experiences in Asian culture have a right to speak up. They don't need a lecture. You can't call it racism because it comes from an Asian woman. And so, you see, this guy, even though he seems to be very, very open-minded on the surface, clearly he's not disagreeing with Asian women who say that Asian men are patriarchal, woman-repressing misogynists. This guy will straight up tell you in your face that, it's my opinion that the values of Western civilization are better than the values of Eastern civilization. Because in Western civilization, it's much better to be a woman, We've got gender equality, we've got, what else? We have achieved the most happiness in Western civilization. But you don't have to agree with me, but that's just my opinion. And this guy, because he was friends with me, he felt that he couldn't be racist. He had a license to make denigrating remarks about Chinese people as well. Like, oh, Chinese people always want to cry racism. But not you, of course, because you're Malaysian, you're not Chinese. Of course, I am Chinese. It's just he wasn't aware, he wasn't cognizant of the fact that that Malaysia is comprised of a variety of races. He thought, because you being Malaysian, how can you be Chinese? Perhaps you have a bit of Chinese admixture. But he was very, very, very xenophobic. And, when I bought a handful for myself, one of the things he commented on my Facebook status was, the most Chinese who consider themselves to be Han are not really Han. Most people who consider themselves to be Han are not really Han, It's like people who are Celtic or Welsh who consider themselves to be Roman. He has to go and white explain to me about my history. And that's, the thing is, and all I'm doing is just trying to take pride in my culture, my Chinese culture. I wasn't asking him for his opinion as well, So, and this is a guy, when I corrected when I drew attention to the fact that the royal butler, the royal butler who made that racist dog whistle about Southeast Asians, was implying that Southeast Asians were dirty and uncivilized, eating with their hands. This guy, this Bob, just had to type in my comment section, lots of East Asians also look down on Southeast Asians. Would an East Asian ever date a dark-skinned person? Most of them wouldn't, well, he's got an Indonesian partner. So you see, the thing is, why did he have to chip that comment in? What did it have to do? I never said that. You know, when I drew attention to the royal butler's racism, I wasn't saying that white men were racist, but he took it to mean that I was saying that white men were inherently more racist than men of other races, which was could not be further from the truth, right? So, you see, you have these people who actually consider themselves to be liberal, progressive, and open-minded, who go out of the, who get a couple of colored friends, couple of colored munchkins to be friends with, but they feel they can make microaggressive jabs at you. They feel they can denigrate your culture. They can, they can denigrate your people of your race. They feel they have a license to do that. You know, the Sapenza and Lawai type of guy, because, well, I've got an Asian girlfriend, or I've got an Asian wife, or I've got a, how can I be racist? That's. Do you ever feel that as a person of color, you have a couple of friends, and I use the term very, very loosely, who aren't really your friends, who don't actually like hanging out with you, but just, they don't actually like you, but they consider it a charity case for a Nordic person to actually condescend to be friends with a colored munchkin? Do you ever feel that's the case? Because I certainly feel that sometimes that is the case, right? And they, while they may vehemently deny the fact that they are racist or that they are, intolerant or bigoted, they oftentimes, if you show even the slightest bit of pride in your culture, suddenly they stamp you down like a tall poppy, and like you're, as if you're trying to as if you're trying to outshine the superiority of Western civilization. The moment you stop kowtowing to Western civilization, the greatness of Western civilization, which is largely Eastern in origin. Okay, I'm gonna make another video on that. Then you'll see their true colors coming out. They're not actually. I feel that they don't actually want to be friends with us, but are just doing it to fulfill a diversity quota, And then the thing is, with these people, if you dare to contradict their pattern of thinking, right? Like with this Bob fellow, I just said, I don't agree with democracy, Democracy is not a part of our Confucian, mores. I just say, and then he goes like, fascism and dictatorship are not Asian values. Then he goes on, and I say, well, look, so was Lee Kuan Yew a fascist? Was he a dictator? Yeah, he was a dictator. He goes like, he goes and white explains to me about how, as a liberal progressive Asian, I should be supporting the Hong Kong protesters, and I should regard Joshua Wong as a hero, as a liberal freedom fighter, even though this guy probably wouldn't even want to be friends with Joshua Wong, right? As in a genuine, probably wouldn't even want to have a genuine, buddy friendship with Joshua Wong. And the thing is, if I said anything that he perceived to be even remotely sexist, he would pounce on me, right? But at the same time, he would ignore everything that, he would ignore the very real sexism in Western countries. This white liberal friend of mine, he would ignore the red pill community, which is extremely right-wing, extremely vitriolic to women. And the thing is, he would even defend, people like Big Ed, people who get Me Too. He would even defend these red pill fellas, even though he's supposed to be a left-winger. Then I realized, left-wingers and right-wingers, oftentimes when it comes to race issues, they are actually in the same boat. Yeah, Western left-wingers and right-wingers may seem to have irreconcilable ideological differences, but when white racial hegemony is threatened, they are all in the same boat, right? Like, this is a guy who will say that Feminism has gone too far in the West. It's now politically incorrect to be a man in the Western democracies. Then at the same time, he applies liberal social justice warrior standards to Asia. He goes like, oh, Asian women have a right to speak out, you know, if they, about their experiences, blah, 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 blah. So you see what I mean? And how does that, I'm an Asian man, you know, if I'm getting, if I'm getting demonized with Orientalist colonial rhetoric, like, you know, in the media, I also have a right to speak out about my experiences, but that's not really convenient to him, because it doesn't really fit the optics of, you know, white Aryan superiority, like Western men, more gentlemanly and more respectful to women than Asian men. So if I speak out and say, hey, we're equal, we're not different, I mean, you know, then of course he would slap you down like a tall poppy, if you get what I mean. I don't know if it's making sense to you. It's certainly making sense to me. And I'm doing this video in one take, so I don't, I'm not editing it, so it's, because I prefer to do videos in one take, because it's, when you cut and edit, it seems a little bit artificial, in my opinion. Whereas when you do it in one take, it's more genuine. It almost feels like a live conversation, a live lecture in a way. So you see what I mean? So yeah, quite palpably, he did not think that, you know, Western men and Asian men were equals. He thought that Western men were morally, culturally, and you know, spiritually superior to Asian men. But he didn't say it in those words. And the only reason he was friends with me was just to fulfill a diversity quota, to prove that he wasn't a bigot. So, you know, you don't have to have, like, to be friends with people who disrespect your culture, who disrespect your identity, who make denigrating remarks about your race, who defend people who make denigrating remarks about your race. You don't have to be the token Asian friend, right? You don't have to. Like, I don't go around making token white friends, you know. If a white person wants to be friends with me, genuine friends with me, of course, as equals, yeah, of course. But I will never be somebody's token Asian friend, you know. The Asian friend that you just keep around to fill up your diversity quota, but you're not really, whom you actually hold contempt for in your heart. I'm not going to be your token Asian friend. So yeah, well, have a nice day, everyone. And just remember, our civilization is not simply a savage, barbaric, stupid civilization. It is thousands of years old. Eastern civilization is thousands of years old. Eastern philosophy is extremely, you know, extremely complex, and you know, and I'm gonna make another video on how, you know, Western philosophers like Voltaire actually praised, you know, Eastern meritocracy, Eastern civilization, and how Western civilization was hijacked, unfortunately. But that's a topic for another video. So don't look down on your own culture. Don't feel that you're inferior. Your culture is inferior to the culture of your white friend. Don't regard it as superior either. It's just they're equal but different. Okay, our cultures are different, and hopefully we can all get along. But you don't have to be the token Asian friend to, you know, to somebody with a colonial mentality. You really don't have to, because we're not a charity case. We are the custodians of civilization that has spanned longer than most Western civilizations. So we are not a charity case. Yeah. Thank you.